Hello and welcome to the video series on Angular. So, in this series, we'll be creating applications or small components in the Angular framework. So, in this very first video, we'll be learning how to install Angular and to create a sample Angular project and also create one of the simplest components that you can create in Angular. So in my browser, I have opened the angular.dev. So this is the Angular website now. It used to be angular.io previously, some years back. Now it is angular.dev. So right now the Angular version is V18. Version 18 is the current version, and by the time you watch this video, maybe a new version of Angular might have released. So please check out the version before you try to install the Angular. So when you go to this very website, you will see the left menu, and here you will see docs. So in docs you will have this installation link, and in the installation link, after clicking on the installation link, you will, if you scroll down a bit, you will see set up a new project locally. So in order to set up a new project locally, there are some prerequisites. So first of them is you need to have a Node.js installed. So if you want to check whether you have a Node.js installed or not, the easiest of way to do it is to open up a command prompt. So in my case it is a Mac OS, so I am opening up iterm, or I could have opened up terminal. So if it is a Windows, you can open up command prompt or PowerShell. If it is Linux, you can open up bash or whatever terminal program that you have. So just to know whether you have installed Node.js or not, you can type the command node space -v, and I have installed. Because I have installed, I can see this output. So the very node version that I have installed is 18.19.1. So it is one of the prerequisite. So for Angular version 18, Node.js 18.9.1 is needed. So in my case it is slightly newer than that is needed, but it's okay. And I need to have VS Code. So I have installed VS Code already, so I have VS Code. So the other one, terminal, because I have already opened up a terminal. So I have everything to be starting. So first of all, we will install the Angular client. So this is how we will create. This is how we will actually install the CLI application of Angular. Using the CLI application of the Angular, we will be creating a new project in Angular. So we can copy this and we can run this. So once this command is installed, which might take a bit of time in your case, depending upon the speed of your internet connection and everything. After this command is installed, you will be able to run the command Angular. So before that, just a heads up about how to install the Node.js. You can go to nodejs.org and download and install. So in this, if you install the Node.js in that way, you will be installing very specific version of Node.js. This is one way to install the Node.js. Another way is to install something called Node Version Manager. So using Node Version Manager, you can install multiple Node.js versions. So this is more preferred way of Node.js installation for developers. So since they might have to deal with changing the Node.js versions for one project to another project. So in order to install the Node.js, if your OS is Mac or Linux, you can search for NVM and you will end up probably in this very page, Node Version Manager. If you are using Windows, you will have to search for NVM Windows. So I'll paste these links in the description of the video. So take a look at those. So the installation for these is pretty straightforward. It is in the description of this very page, how to install and everything. You can follow that to install the NVM. And after installing the NVM, you will have to install a specific version of the node. And after doing so, you will be able to run node-v and get the corresponding Node.js version. So we are going to go ahead and install. We have already installed this very command, npm install -g angular CLI. So I have already completed that. So you can see this output here. So Angular CLI has been installed correctly. So once Angular CLI has been installed, we can create a new project in Angular. So in order to do that, we can run the command ng new space the project name. So ng, just to make sure you have installed the Angular clients correctly, you can maybe run ng space hyphen version. So in my case, I'm getting 18.1.3. So this means Angular CLI has been successfully installed. Now, so I'm just going to create a new directory, Angular YouTube, and I'm going to enter that very directory, YouTube. Here I don't have any other files or directories because it's a newly created one. So here I'm going to run this command, ng new project name. So it will be ng new Angular tutorial YouTube. So upon running this very command, it will ask you to choose any of these. We can stick with the defaults. Right now the default is CSS. We can stick with that for learning. Do you want to enable server-side rendering? I don't want that. I'll just stick with the default values. So as you can see, CSS was the default value. Here also N is the default value. So I'll just hit enter. After hitting enter, it will just proceed and create some files for us. So all these files, this Angular CLI will be creating for us, which is essential for a new Angular project. So it is also installing the npm packages. So Angular is a project which is based on the Node version manager, Node package manager, sorry. So it has several packages. So only because of those packages, Angular will be able to run and render the output as we see. So this might take a while to complete depending upon your internet connection and speed of your computer. So once this is completed, it will show a message something like packages installed correctly and successfully initialized Git. So this output will be dependent upon whether you have version control installed, Git installed. So in my case, I have Git. So here I'm going to open up a new tab. So in my case I have Git installed. Yeah, so if you don't have Git installed, this very output may be different. It may be saying something like Git not found or something, but that's not a showstopper or something. Yeah, in my case it is, I already have Git installed, so it just shows packages installed successfully and successfully initialized Git. So right now I have this folder. So because we used Angular tutorial YouTube to create a new project, the Angular CLI created a new folder with this name. So we are just going to cd into that directory, and if you do an ls in macOS, ls will work. If it is in Windows, macOS or Linux, ls will work. If it is Windows, try dir. So ls, you can see there are many files created. So we also mentioned that some kind of code editor was actually required. So we need to have we can use any choice of our editor, but VS Code is preferred. At least in my case, I prefer VS Code. You can use others such as WebStorm is there, maybe Sublime Text is there, but VS Code have a very good support for Angular and its auto completion. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm in this Angular project directory, I can do code space dot. This actually essentially depends upon whether you have enabled the command line access for Visual Studio Code while installing. If you might have checked that very option to open up VS Code from command line. If you haven't checked that very option while installing VS Code, this will not work. In that case, you can open up Visual Studio Code, and then select this very folder to open. So in my case, I'm just going to use the command code space dot. So here I can see the freshly created project. As you can see, it has a package.json which says which all packages it actually installed, how many commands it have, and which are the dev dependencies, and some readme about how to do it, how to start with this and everything. So we are going to run the project. So in order to run the project, we can just do ng serve, or we can do npm start. Either will do. So after running the npm start, the output will be something like this. And mostly, if you're doing it for the first time, you will be getting 4200 port. So this output will be something like local http localhost 4200. If you already have run an Angular project in that very port, you might get a different output here, saying something like that port is already occupied, whether you want to choose a new port or something. But if you're doing it for the first time, you will see something like this. So we can click the control command or control key and click on this, or we can select this address, copy, and open it up in browser. So this very output that we see is the default template of Angular. So if you see this, we can say we have created the Angular project successfully, and we are running it successfully. So we are going to see what code is actually behind this. So if you go to src app, you can see app component.ts. If you go to main.ts, you will see that it actually bootstraps the app component. So if you command click app component, it will open up the app component file as well. So before that, I want you to be aware of a VS Code extension. So VS Code actually provides so many extensions. So by default, VS Code will support many languages, but in order to have auto completions for Angular, you will have to install this Angular language service. So in order to install this very extension for VS Code, what you have to do is, you'll probably be in this very tab. You have to go to this tab, extensions, and search for Angular language service. So in my case, I have already installed it, and you might be seeing something like install button here or here. So you just have to click on the install, and after the install, VS Code might ask you to restart VS Code. Just proceed and open up the project again. So if I just mention the structure of the Angular application, we have an index.html. So in the index.html file, we have this app root. So if you just search for app root, you can see app root is in index.html. That's fine. And then it is there in this very file. So whatever we see here will be coming from this very file, app.component.ts. So this file will be compiled and converted into some JavaScript, and it will understand that okay, there is a HTML file associated with it and CSS file associated with it, and together with all this, the Angular project will render the output something like that we see here in the browser. So simply put, the HTML, whatever HTML that we see here is this HTML. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to remove everything, and I'm going to create a simple application. So the simplest of applications, for whenever you learn something in any front end frameworks, the simplest of applications that you can build is a counter. So what exactly is a counter? We'll be having a plus button, and right next to the plus button we'll be having a number. So we are going to write a button. So this app.component.html is an HTML file, obviously, as you can see the extension. So we can write the HTML code inside it. For some other front-end frameworks, it will be different. For Vue, it will be .vue, and inside the .vue, you will have a separate section for writing the HTML. But in Angular, you have a separate file for writing the HTML tag. So here we are writing button tag, and I'm closing it, and I'm putting plus button here, and I have saved it. So after saving, if you go to the command prompt, you will see it actually compiled and created the main.js again. And if we go here, you will see all the output. There was some output default template of the Angular. All of them have been gone, and now there is only one button. So after this button, we need a label. So we are going to create label. I don't need the 4 anyway. So I'll be putting 0 here. So maybe I'll have ampersand NBSP. Yeah. So we have a button and a text. So the simplest of application in Angular, or the simplest component that we can create in Angular, is when we click on this button, this value has to increase. So right now it is 0. Once we click on this plus button, it has to be 1. I mean, whenever we click on, the value has to increment. So in order to do this, what you have to do is, so this one essentially is a variable. So this has to be a variable. So this variable has to be created in its corresponding TS file. So we have this value here in HTML, and the corresponding TypeScript file or component TS file for this HTML is app.component.ts. So here we are in the class, we are going to create a new variable. Let's say number colon, and in TypeScript you can mention the type. In JavaScript that is not needed, or it is not, no, it is not actually possible to provide a type, but in TypeScript we can provide a type. So I'm going to, no, let's make the variable's name as count, and let's put the value as 0. So now if you want to use this variable here, what we have to do is open up double curly braces like this. So we need 2 opening curly braces, then a space, and then 2 closing braces, and inside that we can use this variable count. So as you can see, the output, it is actually getting compiled, and we don't have any errors here. We can open up, right click and inspect, and open up the console, and if you refresh, there is no error. It means it has compiled correctly. So if we want to provide in order, so this actually has an error. The reason is, in order to initialize, we need to create a constructor. So in TypeScript we can create a constructor like this: constructor, then the braces, function, parenthesis, then braces. Then here we can reference the count variable, this dot count equal to 0. So once we do that, the error actually goes away. So if this very line is not there, it will throw an error, because counts, we are saying count is a variable which has a number, which is a type of number, but doesn't have a default value. But if it has a default value, this error will go away. Okay, so this actually gets compiled and there is no error. So just to make sure this actually assigning is working fine, we can update the value to 5 and save, and terminal is still compiling correctly. And if we refresh, we don't have to refresh, the value is already there, 5. So it's working fine. So uh, we have created a variable in component, and we have used that variable in component. And now if what we have to do is, when we click on this button, the value has to increase. So here we are going to write a function increment, sorry, increment. So here we are going to do something like, we are going to run something like, we are going to console something in some word. Hey, this got executed. So this function doesn't do anything other than just spitting out some words to the console. So in Angular we can call a function in the component TS file from the HTML file by triggering event handlers. So how do we trigger the event handlers is with these things. I mean, with the HTML tags like button, we can start with the function, and if you start with the function, you can see all these options. And if I type something like CL, you see click is there, close is there. All these actually are events. We may not know every one of them, but still they are events. So what we are interested to know is click. So click will be triggering when we click on the button. So here we are going to provide increment. So this function will be called when we click on this very button. So we switch to terminal. It's still compiling. There is no errors. If there is an error, let's say we type the wrong function name, something like increment, and if I go to the terminal, it says okay, property increment does not exist on typed app component. Yeah, so this function is not there in here. So we had the spelling wrong. If we had the correct spelling, then coming back to the terminal, it will show the green output. That means it's compiling correctly. So we can press on the control button or command button depending upon your keyboard, and control and click will actually go to the component, and we can straight away navigate easily. So this will be available in almost all the editors or IDEs that you're using. In VS Code it is definitely there. So rather than copying this and then searching for this, it's easier to just press on the control key and click on the increment. So we just have to make sure this is working fine. So we have refreshed the page. We don't have to really refresh the page, it will be refreshed automatically, but yeah. And now if we click on this plus button, we see this output. Hey, this got executed. So this is working fine. So clicking on this very button calls a function, and here we can increment the value of count. So this dot count equal to, we are going to increment by 1. So this dot count for now is 5. So this will be increased by 1. So plus 1. So refresh. We don't have to refresh. I'm just refreshing it. It's just a habit. So I'm clicking the plus. It's incrementing 7. You see, it's working fine. I also want to show you something about the debugging. So here if you type something like debugger, it will be an autocomplete debugger, and put a semicolon and save. It will still be compiling correctly. So this is the easiest way to debug an Angular application. So if we have this and refresh and then click, this will be paused in the debugger. So right now it is like this function has been called, but uh, it got paused at this very line where we have provided the debugger. So as you can see, we can also see the variables. Let's see globals. No, this, yeah, we have the local variables app component. We can see the value of count variable, it is 5. So if we click on this very icon, that is resume script execution, that is F8. In my case it is F8, maybe it is different in your case, but we can just click on this icon. You see, it just executed the next line and just went off. So if we click here again, it will still be paused in here. Now you can see the variables value. So if you have any scenario where you want to understand the value of the variable in this component, you can use debugger. So this is just a good way to understand the issues in your Angular application. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this. So yeah, so I'm also going to make this value, initial value 0. Yeah, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Yeah, so with this we have learned how to start an Angular application, what is needed to start an Angular application, what are the prerequisites, how to create a new Angular project, and create the simplest of component that you can create in Angular. So in the next videos, we'll take baby steps. We'll implement the more advanced version of Counter. So until then, see you.